Welcome to the Apparel Business Summit, where you will learn how to create, launch, or grow a successful clothing business in 2019 and beyond. I'm your host, Glynis Tao, and I'm so excited you can join me today. Now, the theme of this event is all about laying the foundation so that you can build a purposeful and profitable clothing business that will stand the test of time. I think you will really enjoy today's panel discussion. I have three incredible entrepreneurs here to talk about how fashion entrepreneurs use business as a force for good, putting social and environmental impact alongside company profits. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad you can join me today.
Thanks for having us.
So before we begin, let's start with introductions. Let's go around and introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, your business name, what you do. We'll start with you, Kaya.
Okay, I'm Kaya. I started a sustainable apparel brand called Novel Supply Co. I use all hemp and organic cotton fabrics, and I have everything manufactured locally. And basically I started this because I learned all about textiles waste in a research project of mine in school, and I wanted to do things differently. There just wasn't a lot of options around Vancouver for, sustainable apparel that was kind of like on the cooler side. So I wanted to make sustainability cool and create an apparel option for, people that didn't want to sacrifice their style for their values and vice versa. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you had won the Young Champions of the Earth Award, and you were invited to go to Nairobi to speak at a conference.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so in 2017, I won the Young Champions of the Earth Prize by the United Nations and Covestro, which is a big company. They funded the award. And the first time I got to meet a whole bunch of very important people from all around the world. I got to go to the Environment Assembly and speak at the Environment Assembly, and then we got entrepreneurship training. I went to Berlin for entrepreneurship training, and yeah, it was a really amazing experience. And so I recently found out that they're inviting me back, and I get to go there in about 11 days and speak again on a panel about sustainable fashion and consumption and all the things that the reason why I started this brand in the first place. So I'm really excited to go and speak again and meet the next cohort of sustainable Earth champions and just hear what they have to say as well, because each of them is working on a different project to do with sustainability, not necessarily in the fashion sphere, but it's really cool to be surrounded by people like me and who are as passionate about the environment and making change and doing something different and protecting the planet in some way. So I'm really excited to do that. So keep an eye out on my stories. I'll be posting along the way as much as I can. I'm only there for 3 nights, so it'll be a very quick trip and turnaround, but
You'll be posting all your adventures on Instagram then, or?
Yeah, at Novel Supply Co. I'll post on that one, so you can follow me there.
Awesome. Okay, and right next to you is Jessica Redditt.
Hey, I'm Jessica Redditt. Jessica Redditt Designs. I just launched my line this summer. I've been in fashion for quite a long time. I studied at Ryerson in Toronto for a few years. I had my first boutique around age 21. Decided that I wanted to open a store that included my own designs, but had a real focus on sustainability even back then. I had recycled clothes, upcycled my designs, carried vintage, started making stuff in India, with all deadstock textiles. So it was really my main focus from way back then. But after a couple of years of traveling to India and producing there, I decided that I'd really like to focus on just, more grassroots, made in made in Canada. Moved to Vancouver about 5 years ago and decided to start producing in Vancouver locally. Tried to source locally made textiles in Canada. It's kind of
not the thing.
So looked in America as well. It's a difficult procedure. Hopefully, one that I can encourage more through my growth. But decided that mostly dead stock was a great way to go, and also natural textiles was really my focus for us as the consumers too, and wearing natural fibers. I think it's really important, and also for its future, like in the landfill, for example. Otherwise, I do use dead stock textiles, so that's a form of recycling as well. And natural dyes. I was just pretty much focusing on what would be the most sustainable way I can make clothing, and here in my own city. So using natural dyes, and then I really got into the idea of growing my own dyes as well. As much grassroots implementation as possible. So I've really dabbled in that. There's such a world of its own, so learning every day about natural dyes processes. It's long. It takes it's a huge endeavor, but something that I'm still so excited to dive more into. So my line consists of more capsule style pieces and less seasonless. Natural fibers, kind of an elegant style, day to night looks.
Great.
And reusing as much as possible. So even waste pieces I make into things that are usable, like scrunchies, for example.
One of her scrunchies.
I like it.
Thanks for having me here today. Yeah, it's fun.
Thank you. Irina.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, okay, wonderful. Hi, my name is Irina. I have 3 different projects that I'm working on very passionately. They're all around textile waste. They're just addressing different audiences, and I decided to separate them all because the message is similar, but it's tailored differently. So my first project, it's a business called FabCycle, like Fabric Recycle or Fabulous Recycle. And what we do is that we work directly with factories, fashion designers, fashion design schools, and basically anybody that produces textile waste and collect their textile waste to get it either reused or recycled. So behind me, as you can see, there's a lot of rolls. And it's not all, it goes even more in here. And that's also one of the things that we do. We collect textile waste in the form of rolls, which is dead stock, which is something that Jessica mentioned she's working with. And we decided to open fairly recently a textile waste reuse space. So we opened it in Vancouver so people can come and also play around with materials. We have free stuff. We have really highly discounted fabric rolls, and the whole point of it is to make it very accessible for designers or creative community to come and use textile waste that if they wouldn't be using it, it would be destined for the landfill. So our mandate is essentially to create a circular business around that. The second project, and it's not as a business, it's more a nonprofit, and I started it about 5 years ago. It's called Framework Education Society. And what it is that we do community repair events. So I specifically work in community centers and libraries and areas where consumers and just people that go and feel comfortable in being, and we bring sewing machines and sewing supplies, and then we invite people to bring their own clothes, and then we'll help each other repair the clothes. So those are community repair events, or as we call them, clothing fixes that we do, and we're pretty busy. Last year and the year before, we had 24 events each year. This year, we're looking probably at around 40. now for 2019, and the repair community is really growing. So Framework Education Societies really focuses on the message of skill sharing and repairs and encouraging repairs, but also repair businesses and creating the connection to our clothes as consumers and as individuals as well. So that's the second one. And the third project is more related to industry. We have a group called Vancouver Sustainable Fashion Designers, or VSFD, and it's a community of almost 500 people right now. And it's a community of designers that are locally based, and they share very similar values of sustainability and connection to the community, and wanted to connect and share more information, but also support, because we all know how difficult it is to be in the industry, especially when you're starting out. And even if you're not starting out, growing the business is very difficult. So having the support of the community is extremely important, and that's why we started the group VSFD, and we started doing events around that. So if you're a designer, welcome to join the group. It's a Facebook group, yeah, so getting fairly busy in the last couple of months. Things are growing, which is fantastic. Thank you for having me here.
And they don't necessarily have to live in Vancouver if they wanted to join the Facebook group as well, right?
No, not necessarily.
But they wanted to be part of a community of sustainable fashion designers. I think you have people from like all over, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The reason we decided to go with Vancouver specifically to be geographically bound is because we have really interesting conversations happening in the group, and they're very locally based. So for example, somebody's going to ask, which factory can I go and produce this and this and that? And people that live in this space and work in this space, they know. So we share information that is very relevant to the geographical place. So it's not necessarily like general kind of conversations around sustainability. It's more very specific, because people need support specifically. That's why the group was designed to be location bound. And it can be replicated to other locations, but a Vancouver-ish area.
Yeah, it's sort of like it's like you created a resource base of people where you can go to for resources and that sort of thing, right? If they're looking for anything.
Yeah, and actually have a community that understands.
When I was first starting. I was saying I wish it was around when I first started, because there was a lot of like questions that I had that it would have been so useful, but I had to kind of learn things the hard way, but makes you learn much quicker that way.
Well, yeah, at least it exists now. When did you start the group, Irina?
The group started I want to say around April or May 2016.
Okay.
And we've been running events every 2 months or so.
Okay, so the term dead stock come up a few times. Jessica talked about it. Irina, you talked about it as well. Can someone define what dead stock is, in case if people don't know what that is?
Sure, Jessica, do you want to go, or do you? For us is basically new fabric rolls, or it could be also even garments, full garments, but related to that, we're talking about fabric rolls. They're new, they're unused, but the factory or the designer that owned the rolls and bought them, they don't need them for whatever reason. It could be either damaged, but it also could be that they either changed their mind about different things, so they don't need that fabric or that pattern, so decided not to use it anymore, or they have access of materials, so they have things that they just don't need anymore. So it creates dead stock. So it's basically brand new fabric rolls, not used, and they just don't have a home anymore.
If I can add something to that, the reason why there is so much dead stock available is that because of the fast pace of the industry and just how much faster it's been every single year, it creates so much more waste and so much more dead stock, because, oh, that color is out of fashion. We have to get rid of it, pick the next color. Just for one example, the trend.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we see that quite a lot, as you can tell. Like, this is only like from August. There's a lot. So every time factory is moving, or a school you want to clear out, like they accumulate things, or factories are closing, for example. That's another thing that is happening. There's excess of materials, and they should flow back into the industry, not to the landfill, because they have a lot of value for other people.
And this is just from the city of Vancouver?
This is only from August, and it's not from everybody, right? This is like a tiny portion.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great that you're doing something about it to address that issue. So my next question is, what are the biggest issues that our industry, being the apparel industry, is facing at the present moment? And what is your business doing to address those issues? Who wants to speak?
I can start, I guess. Just basically, one of the biggest problems or challenges that I noticed when I was first starting my business was the problem of textiles waste. So I was thinking of like all the ways that I could develop a product that could, in the end, we could do something with, like have basically a circular product. And I was looking at, different fabrics and what fabrics would be the best to use, and was learning sort of all about synthetics and like how much chemicals were involved in making them, and basically they're like derived from petroleum and chemicals all blended together. And they're usually blended types of fabrics together, so it makes it not recyclable and not biodegradable. So I really decided to focus on the natural fabrics. And I know that there is textiles recycling in natural fabrics, but most of it is in Europe, I think. Probably Irina has more information on that, but I think the natural recycling is more in Europe right now. I think that we will eventually have textiles recycling, because the city is starting to talk about this issue and starting to think of solutions. So actually, I just saw that the Return It Bottle Depot in North Vancouver is starting to accept clothing. So that's something that's super exciting that just happened. But that's the reason why I decided to do all natural fabric, because in hopes that, one day we'll have textiles recycling. And if it did end up in a landfill or somewhere else, it is natural and not dyed, unless I use like natural dyes. So tried to design with the end in mind. And then also I've developed a take back program through my business, where I take back the apparel at the end of its life. So essentially it's extended producer responsibility. And that's something that has been talked about at the city for a really long time. And it's moving quite slow, I think really too slow. So that's why I decided to kind of like take initiative and do it myself. And I know a lot of other brands are just like, oh, like once they make a product, it's like in the consumer's hands. But I think that that's the wrong way to look at it, because they don't really have a lot of the resources or answers to know what to do with the product. And now that they've gotten rid of a lot of like the clothing donation bins around Vancouver, and a lot of, the Salvation Armies and Value Villages are not taking a lot of, they can't take any more stuff. It's like we as brands and designers, I think, need to take more responsibility for the products we're making. So that's why I created my Fresh take back program, so I can take responsibility for it, because I know what to do with it. In the meantime, I'm going to be upcycling it and basically extending the life of the materials that my clothing is made out of for as long as possible, to keep it out of the landfill. And then hopefully we'll have an option for textiles recycling sooner rather than later.
Definitely. I mean, that's great that you actually brought up the issue, like whose responsibility is it? Because it actually led me to my next question about, if in order for any change to happen, there needs to be a shared responsibility from both the consumer and the brands themselves. And not only that, then the government now seems to be like, the programs that the initiatives that are there to be able to address the wastage and stuff going into landfills and stuff. So maybe Stephanie, Jessica, if you want to talk about, what are the responsibilities for the business, and what are the responsibilities for the consumers?
So the responsibilities of the companies, the designers, I think would be sourcing from responsibly. I think natural textiles is a really great thing to be focusing on. And where they are being manufactured, like right from the source to the product. So entire line of production to consuming. I'm getting off track here.
No, I think like basically designers and brands, like, because we're small brands, we're two really small brands, but so we're the designer and we're the brand. So I think for us, like, the responsibility comes with just sourcing responsibly, like materials, making sure our apparel is being made ethically, making sure we are educating our consumer and like making sure they know what to do at the end of life of a garment, what or how they can repair it. And like we have those resources because, you know, we know Irina and we can send them to her Fix It events. And a lot of consumers don't have those resources and they don't know. So it's terrifying, but so much textiles waste just goes to the landfill because people just don't know what to do, or they live in apartments downtown and they're, you know, trying to move out and they can't find a clothing donation bin, so they just chuck it in the garbage, which is crazy to like even think that happens. But in my interview, in my research project in school, like I literally interviewed these guys that wanted to start like a pilot project of having a clothing donation bin in apartments, buildings downtown Vancouver. And they were saying that, because they did a lot of like market research, and they were saying, yeah, a lot of it just gets chucked in the garbage because people are moving out and they don't have the time or the energy to like go and donate it. So, and I just think that people were so far removed from like actually what happens to our clothing at the end of its life that people don't really think twice about that. Like most people do, but there is still a large population who think, oh, well, I'm just going to throw it out. Throwing out it's not going anywhere. Like it's still here. It's going to the landfill and most likely going to sit in the landfill for hundreds of years. And we don't even know how long really, because polyester hasn't been around long enough for us to know how long it stays there for. So yeah, that's the responsibility, I think, for us.
Also, right from the get-go of cutting the garments, being able to arrange our patterns so we're producing less waste, less with our fabric, and then to sewing, quality sewing, and making garments that last. For example, H&M, they have beautifully sewn garments. I think we were discussing this last week, but the quality of the fabric is really terrible.
And the thread. Just like it's built to break.
Built to wear once.
Planned obsolescence. So it's basically built to break so that they have to go and get a new shirt every few months because, you know, it breaks, or like in the wash it becomes like crazy weird fit. So yeah, that's another huge thing to think about is like shrinkage and like what happens to your garment as you wear it and wash it.
And educating the consumer about how
proper
to care
yeah,
for your garments so they do last. And also then designing maybe pieces that are not going to go out of fashion by the next 3 months.
Yeah, using colors that are like not trendy, more just like everlasting and kind of all go together, and they're a little bit more versatile than like the hot pink or the purple colors, you know, stuff that's gonna be not trendy.
Not that we don't all love fashion. I think it's more about making mindful selections.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to all what you guys talked about. There's a couple of things that I wanted to add. One of them is that to folks that live around Vancouver area, Metro Vancouver, which is a body that is in charge of solid waste management of 21 municipalities in the area, they just launched a campaign to basically encourage residents to reduce, repair, or reuse their textile waste. And so they launched this 2-month campaign to really let people know what is actually happening to the fabrics when the clothes once they donate it, or like how things work, and also where can they donate it, where can they repair it, what are the tips and tricks they can do to extend the life cycle of their clothing. And so the nonprofit, the framework, we partner up with them to support them in creating the messages in terms of we help them shoot videos of how to, and we're going to join their outreach campaigns in the next 2 months. So in terms of, we're talking about responsibility, who's responsible for what, I just wanted to add that there is also a government body that in terms of policy, it's very important to have a conversation going also with the top, with the policymakers, because the influence they would have is much more impactful than people doing things on their own on ground level, just that. So I think there should be always a balance between the policymakers, the academia, the businesses, and the community as well, talking about this topic and figuring out a way to work together to reduce textile waste, because essentially that is the goal. And it was actually quite interesting because we're talking about textile waste, right? But it's a lot more helpful to understand what that actually means in terms of weight or impact. So Metro Vancouver did a waste composition study to understand how much textile waste actually exists in the landfill, and they came up that 5% of annual of waste in the landfill is actually textile waste, which is enormous because we're talking about 44 million pounds. And that's about 70 pounds average per person, per resident for Metro Vancouver. That's enormous in terms of amounts. And that's, and a lot of it pertains to the fact that people just don't know what to do with their textile waste. We know we can donate wearable garments, things like, our sweaters are like a wearable condition. But what do we do with things like sheets or stained things, or our underwear or lingerie, things like that people are sometimes embarrassed to even donate. So the campaign addresses all these issues and basically demystifies a lot of the notions that people might have about what it is they can donate and what they can actually do with things. And it's not just about donations, it's actually prevention of the point where we have to donate excess things. It's about having a mindful consumption, so it's about reduce, and it's about extending the life of our clothes by repairing and caring for our garments. And it's not just repair, it's even things like washing and ironing, or even in this phase of before you even purchase the clothes, how do you know it's a quality garment and it will last you longer? So it's more about knowing more about their clothes so we can actually make better decisions. So I think it's a really welcome effort that is happening from Metro Vancouver, and it will lead to a lot more conversations about it and a lot of questions and hard questions asked from the industry that is very needed as well, so we can propel the industry to be better. Yeah.
Well said.
Thank you.
That's very useful information that you just shared with us there, Irina. Does the city of Vancouver have some kind of like date where they've set to implement this and say, we're going to reduce this amount by this much, by this time? Is there any kind of set date to that?
I can't speak of City of Vancouver, but as far as I know, there are any specific dates. I think there's a lot of conversations and wanting to get a bit more answers and get more people involved. So I think we are setting up to the space where we can actually have a lot more meaningful goals and results. But I cannot speak of City of Vancouver about that, unfortunately. However, there is a sense of a lot of transition happening, and things are happening, people are talking. I also wanted to add to that, also, it's not just here in Vancouver this is happening. This is a change that is happening globally, with a lot more things, a lot more people demanding more transparency and accountability from bigger brands. I think we see a lot of leaders, especially in the athleisure markets, where they are the ones leading a lot of the more sustainable efforts of having a lot more transparent supply chain, a lot more efforts around sustainable fabrics or preferred materials, as they call them. So things are happening outside of city of Vancouver or where we live right now. Those are global changes that are happening at the same time. And so like even on Netflix, if you go, you can see the Marie Kondo show, right? It essentially speaks of the same mindset, right? So we're all talking about this, and that's because it's the zeitgeist, right? It's the spirit of time. This is where we at, and this is where we're going for, and things are happening and we're changing things. So it's an exciting time to be here, but it's also a time where we gotta like propel and be in action and not just sit and wait for things to happen.
Yeah. And it's so great that we're all coming together to like, work together and make this happen. And I think part of our job is also not only as designers and business owners, but we're also educators and part of this, right? It's like, I think part of our job is to educate people on how to, have a better textile world for the consumers.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny that you had mentioned Marie Kondo's. That seems, her name just pops out from everywhere now. Everywhere I turn, I hear Marie Kondo, and her tagline of like, "Does it spark joy?"
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of conversation about how it's maybe not a good thing either.
It's creating a lot of waste
Yeah.
as well, because everyone's like, "Oh, this doesn't spark joy. Check it out." But like, I
We
just
talked about the second
like,
part.
yeah, like recycle things too.
In the garbage bin.
Yeah.
And she doesn't talk about what happens to all the stuff they throw away either. Where does it all go? Yeah.
I think what's interesting about what she's talking about is having that mindset of like, before you even have to let go of things, like having like when you acquire things, is acquiring them from a place of, does this spark joy? Like we talk about right now, the cleansing part, but she's talking about having this mindset before you have to get to the cleansing part even. Mm-hmm. So I understand.
Yeah.
I think it's all good messages.
Also talk about in their documentary about, does this item, before you buy something, like ask, is this item going to add value to your life? And I found that to be really helpful in the sense, like, sometimes like, does this spark joy, is like, yeah, it sparks joy in the moment. I want this thing. But like, at the end of the day, like, is this going to add value to your life? I think that that's a better question to ask in the moment when you're buying something, because you're going to be like, you're really going to think about it a lot harder, I think.
Yeah. And is that garment, are you still going to feel the same way about this garment, 6 months, a year, 2 years more down the road?
Yeah, definitely.
So, do you think people will purchase and wear clothes more responsibly in the future? Will people buy less?
I think so. I see the shift happening, like, and I don't know whether it's because I'm in my kind of little bubble sphere of like sustainable fashion designers, but I just noticed even from, being at markets and just having the different conversations with different customers, and more and more people are just more aware of like where their clothes are made, what it's made out of, and they love talking about it, and they're talking to their family and friends about it, and they're becoming like our educators as well, and like passing on the information. So I really think that we are changing as a culture, and I hope it's more than just in my bubble and sphere. I think it is. But yeah, that's the sense that I get.
And I think just the more that we talk about it, and the more is going to get shared, and it's just exponential. So it's been a slow process, but hopefully it will speed up now that it's
picking
over
up
the last
momentum.
year.
Yeah.
It's like this collective consciousness of all of us thinking about it, right? And growing.
Yeah.
I personally think, I sorry, I don't mean to be a party pooper, but I think in terms of like the question is are people going to buy less? I don't know, to be honest. I'm not sure. I know in terms of just retail, like what is happening in retail generally, that we see a lot more transition towards e-commerce versus physical stores. We see that quite a lot. We see department stores closing or going bankrupt. We see that, Targets and Sears everywhere in Canada specifically. Actually, I think the patterns of consumptions are changing for sure. I think they are changing for the best because as consumers, we are demanding a lot more sustainable fabrics, or a lot more questions about where was this made, or a lot more questions in terms of like knowing more about the brand. And the brand wants it because they want to have a more loyal base of consumers, right? So there is that kind of a tension that is happening between the consumers and the brands that we're trying to kind of figure out a way to be more sustainable, but the brand needs people to buy more, right? Because that's the financial model. So I don't know if people are going to buy less, to be honest. I think they're going to buy better because we're demanding better. And I think there are people not going to buy less, and because the way our economy is based on, it's capitalism. We are essentially dependent on that. We dependent on financial flows and things that happen. So I don't know if people are going to buy less. They're just going to buy better.
Mm-hmm.
That's my personal opinion.
Unless our economy shifts to a regenerative economics. But yeah, I definitely, I kind of agree. I think that, although I don't know if you know this, Irina, but what I heard was that like Forever 21 had its first like dip in sales this year, which to me, it was like, that was a win, because I was just like, well, maybe people are starting to like buy less fast fashion and really start to buy. I think they are buying better, but I think as they buy better, they're going to, start to become loyal to these brands that are hopefully educating people on like mindful consumerism. Like, you don't need to buy a new shirt every few months. You can just buy this one quality shirt and you can have a capsule wardrobe that you can mix and match everything in your wardrobe and have less things. And I don't know, my mind shifted when I watched like minimalism, the minimalists, and like True Cost. I don't know, my brain changed. I was like, I don't want more stuff in my life. And as I was sort of starting to like filter through all my things and, donate a lot of stuff, I felt like a huge weight lifted off my shoulders and so much less like stuff holding me down. And I think that once people start to think this way and not like fill the void that's inside them with material things and clothes, then I think they will change, I hope. And I think it'll be a multi-pronged thing. Like, obviously, like we're based on capitalism, but I think once consumers start to demand a certain thing, like brands have to fulfill that as well. So it kind of works both ways. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I see it from both ways, but hoping for the best.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think we are seeing a lot more. It's not just purchasing and not just textile or apparel. I think we see that kind of a mindset coming from a lot of other groups that are very sustainably minded, environmental groups, people that really care about zero waste living, things like that. And it's all connected. Like the consumption patterns are all connected. So they connected to the way we buy clothes. The reason I was saying that I don't think people are gonna buy less is because I don't think the change is gonna happen because of that, because of more sustainable living. I think if people are going to buy less, it's going to be because something is going to happen environmentally, like a disaster that is going to basically cut off our resources of like producing cotton or water, or something that is a scarcity based, that's going to make a significant change, like its impact. Otherwise, the change will happen is going to be very slow, I think. And that's why I'm saying, I don't know if people are going to buy less, like significantly, that it's going to create impact as much as like a war or some kind of other like resource scarcity would cause. Basically just wanted to mention that. But I do think people are like demanding a lot more from anywhere where they buy things. So I think this will definitely reduce a lot of things and transform things in the way we do things.
Okay, that's great. Let's just shift the dialogue a little bit and talk about our businesses, because our audience is business owners right now, and say for someone who is looking to start a sustainable apparel company, maybe if someone can speak about how has your company been able to implement a sustainability program that fits with your core values, and what are some of the challenges that you face with running a sustainable apparel business and opportunities out there as well for you? Does anyone want to talk about that?
Keeping a business afloat is a startup business. That's the biggest thing, because you've got on one hand what your core values are, which is doing things ethically, paying fair wages, buying the right textiles that are sustainable, and then on the other hand, you have a business and you need to pay for these things that are essentially way more expensive than not ethically made. Mm-hmm. And then being able to put money out to produce the garments, and then being able to sell those things and put that money back into your business. So it's this the never-ending cycle, and being able to reach also the right clients in good timing, with the turnover of stock and not holding on to past season stock, which is one of the reasons I think a lot of sustainable designers choose to do seasonless collections.
The sustainability part of my business was kind of, it's the reason I started this business. So it's like through and through everything I do, from sourcing fabric to thread to, I spent 3 months looking at the different inks for screen printing, because there's not really a sustainable option. There's some that are less bad. So I was, looking up as many articles as I could find. So it's a lot more time consuming, I would say, if you care. And a lot more expensive. We both source our hang tags from a printer that uses all recycled paper and veggie-based inks, and our fabrics, are definitely more expensive than your average fabric, and our manufacturing is a lot more expensive than manufacturing overseas. And when we just did a show together, and when you're talking to consumers, it's still very clear that the gap between the cost or the pricing is some people get it, a very small percentage of people get it, and then most people don't get it because they're used to this fast fashion that's a $10 t-shirt, and they come to my booth and my t-shirts are $50, and they're just so confused. And then that creates this situation where we are having to defend why it's this price. And really at the end of the day, we're doing all these things for the better of humankind and the planet, and it sucks to have to defend yourself a lot.
So what do you say to those people? How do you address that question?
I basically say, that's honestly what it costs to pay somebody a fair wage in Canada. Because if you think about a garment and it being sewn. And a lot of the questions come from like my kids stuff, because my kids stuff is not as expensive as my adult stuff, but it's still a little bit more expensive than your average kid stuff made overseas. Like my kids' tee is $32, but I work with a local nonprofit called AbleWear, and they're training women with barriers, and they're increasing their sewing skills so that they can make more incomes for their families here, because generally they have language barriers and it's really hard for them to find work here because they've like recently moved here. So I just basically tell them, like, this is how much there's the same amount of seams in a child shirt as an adult shirt. So it takes almost the same amount of time. And if you're paying somebody a fair wage, and maybe that's like $15 to $18 an hour, that's expensive to make. So just the manufacturing alone, and then there's, all the notions that are involved, all the thread, the little accessories, or the screen, the print on a kid's shirt is $3. Like it's still the same cost as an adult shirt. So like technically it should just be the same price, but people, it's like really
don't perceive it that way.
And we've gotten so far down the path of what things cost, and people are so used to it that we are needing to reinvent what pricing is all about and re-educate people on why this is this amount.
And something that we've talked about before is wholesale, and how it really it's difficult to even pull off as a sustainable designer, because for somebody to resell our product, is anybody gonna buy it, right?
They basically won't take less than 50% off, and like we can't do that because we'll go out of business. So right now we're in a place where we can't wholesale to stores. No stores will take less than 50%. So we are doing it on our own. We're doing markets and we're doing online sales, and that's kind of the route that we are kind of like pushed down. And ideally we'd love to have our stuff in a couple of stores, because that's what the first thing people ask is, where can I get this in stores?
That was about the first question of everybody that visited our booth this week was, where can I buy this? So it would be really nice to be able to wholesale, but at our scale, as it is right now, it's not possible. Or we won't make any money, at least.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that I don't have I don't have any specific tactic in terms of sustainability, because the business Fab Cycle, we service designers that wanted to recycle their textile waste. But just being in the VSFD group and just seeing what people deal with, one of the tactics that they do, they just it's really hard to create a sustainable product. And sustainability, like as the term, is very gray, like in terms of what is a sustainable product? Well, you can't really be 100% in everything, because it's it's really expensive, and B, you never have 100% certainty. Even the large companies, they have some transparency issues, and that's because you can't really know everything. So a lot of designers, they basically choose what is their sustainability focus. So sometimes it would be fabrics, more sustainable fabrics. Sometimes it would be the fact that they recycle their textile waste when they produce. Sometimes it would be just having a take back program, or something else, or even have suggestions on how to repair your clothes, things like that. Everybody is choosing their battles in different levels and aspects, and even the really big companies, they still grappling on what that would look like. So yeah, it's a hard struggle, and and I applaud everybody that is in it, because it's a mutual effort to really educate the consumers to make better decisions, but also survive, because we're small business owners, just happen to be in apparel, when we just want to make a living, and we just want to do what we're really passionate about and what we really care about, and want to be acknowledged for that. And
Well, I applaud all of you guys for doing this and doing what you believe in. I know it's not easy. what is one piece of advice you could offer to someone who is thinking of starting a sustainable apparel line?
I would say like to focus on, like Irina was saying, just focus on the main things, like choose a few things and focus on them. Like maybe fabric, locally made or ethically made, and dyes or something. Like focus on 3 things and really like take those to the next level, and make sure that you're doing everything possible in those areas. Because I mean, for me, I struggle because I'm so driven by my values that every decision I make, I get stunted because I want to do it in the most sustainable way. So every decision I make takes a lot longer than your average business, I think. But yeah, I've managed to solve a lot of the problems and figure out, you know, more sustainable options. And I think if you're always like pushing towards that, and that's your kind of guiding light, then you'll be able to figure out things that work for you and your business and sort of focus on that.
I think to add, I would say a real focus. I know this is said, but focus on who your market is, and be niche if possible. I think that helps a lot with, and then also just starting small with maybe 1 or 2 items to launch.
Yeah.
That would be one of my suggestions. Maybe something that I've learned from. I wanted, so many products to start out with, and it just takes a lot longer. And the launch takes longer too. So my 2 cents.
Yeah, instead of like the collection that people always try to have, just focus on like a couple products.
Especially if it's your first time doing it.
Yeah, to product development and like pattern development, samples and fittings and all of that can be like insane if you have like 8 products. And it's such a way bigger investment too. If you're focusing on a couple products, you're only, you can bulk order, you can order more of that one fabric, and then that will bring down your cost for that type of fabric, and then you can make more of that 1 item or 2 items, and then bring down the cost of manufacturing, because it's all economies of scale. Like it's all about making more, which goes against all of our values, but it's all about making more to bring down the cost, because it's a lot more efficient to make 500 garments versus like 25.
And don't underestimate the development process. It is very expensive. It takes a long time. Yeah.
I think that's really great advice when you're starting out, because same with for me as well, is to focus on, about 1 to 3 main issues, tackle those and just focus on those instead of trying to do everything all at once, and really narrow down your collection, the number of pieces that you offer in the beginning, not having that much, not being as seasonal, having few good, fitting blocks to work off of, perfect those and test them out and refine them. Maybe just change up your fabric and colorways, but not having too many, too much assortment in the line. Keep it really tight in the beginning, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, excuse my allergies. I just wanted to add to that as you can see, Glennis and Jessica and Kaya are experts in what they've been doing. And I would encourage anybody that wants to start a line, or even like already in the process and growing, is just to reach out to other people that are going through that or have gotten through to it, because there's a huge value in having your back supported by your community. And we're all going through very similar emotions and very similar challenges and struggles, especially because we have to outsource a lot of the things, not just like outside our local area. So the information that my colleagues will have here, for example, will be very, very valuable to other people that live outside our region. So my tip would be reach out to your community and get their support, talk to people and get together, because we're way stronger together. or join our group if you are in the Vancouver area. So that would be my tip.
Awesome. Before we wrap this up, are there any other final thoughts?
Thank you, Glynis. Just wanted to say thank you for making this happen.
Well, Fashion Revolution Week is coming soon, April 2nd to 28th. What can we expect? What can people do to get involved?
I can answer that. I'm the local Fashion Revolution coordinator for the region. And I would encourage everybody to go on the website and look at the resources list. They have an extensive list of resources and reports available as well. And we would encourage anybody to print out all those posters and make them as visible as possible during that week and even before and after, because there's something really, really powerful about having this image. People get it right away. And it creates, and you're associated with that, and creates a better conversation. So I would really encourage people to just go to the website, and if they need any support, reach out to your country coordinator, and they will provide you with more support as well.
And what's the website for that?
fashionrevolution.org.
Do you have any events planned in Vancouver?
We're going to have a couple of clothing fix-its and also a clothing swap. So it's going to be on the framework with the Q framework, the Q.ca website.
Okay, great.
And there's also one last thing I was just gonna say. Jessica and I are in several markets coming up, so you can find us there at those markets. Usually through both of our Instagram. Mine's at Novel Supply Co. Hers is
at Jessica Redditt Designs _ between the words.
Underscores between the words at Jessica Redditt Designs. And we usually post what markets we'll be at, so you can come check out lots of local sustainable designers and
sign up for our newsletter too.
Yeah.
For our websites, because we don't email blast too often, but when we do, it'll be links to our blogs, which we write about cool sustainable
natural dyeing and sustainable fashion stuff. So it's sign up, and we'd love to meet you in person too at one of our markets.
Yeah. Thank you. And Irina, how can people contact you? Or
you guys are welcome to just reach out if you are interested in textile waste, just want to talk more textile waste, or just chat about it. You're welcome to reach out to fabcycle.ca. That's fabric recycle, so fabcycle.ca. And then you can just reach out from there. And if you're interested in talking about other stuff, the repair activities or the group, we can just talk from there. Or come for a visit. We're here in Vancouver. You can play around with textile waste and really fun stuff. It's a huge space. So and please reach out to Glynis, because she knows what she's talking about, and she can connect you to all the right people. So that's all.
I'm really glad we all got together to have this conversation today. I hope you are all able to gain something from this. I'm really glad to be part of this community and bring all of you together today. I'm really happy to have you part of this summit. Thank you all for your contribution today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you
for having us.
Thank you.
Awesome.